And it's that time again for The Locker Room, where the BS stops and the analysis starts. And we are your three hosts, Kyle Anderson.
It's Brendan Jones.
Matt Hirsch.
And once again, The Locker Room is brought to you by Rammer Jammer Beer. Remember, go to rammerjammerbeerco.com to find the locations in Alabama where you can buy Rammer Jammer Beer. Tonight, we're going to be talking about the NFL Draft. Probably one of the most surprising first rounds we've ever seen, but I can't wait to get Brandon's opinion and Matt's opinion on who went where, and more importantly, who was the biggest shock in the first round. Guys, before we start, this NFL Draft, a lot of people said was kind of boring. Weren't any big names taken in the first round. Only one quarterback was taken. What was your feeling? What did you think, Brandon, this year about it?
When people say that, they're talking about skill positions. They're talking about names that just jump out to you in skill positions. This was a meat and potatoes draft. Get what you need. So you had some very talented guys go in the first round. But the first part of the draft was dominated by offensive and defensive linemen. Those are not sexy positions. A lot of people that watch the game of football, that say they watch the game of football, only watch the skill positions. They couldn't tell you about maybe a defensive tackle or two, but they couldn't tell you about a guard or offensive lineman unless that offensive lineman plays for their team and the announcers doing the game are bringing them up. So it was a pretty good draft to me.
Matt, what do you think?
I kind of echo that. I'm one of those guys that I can tell you a little bit about a defensive tackle or defensive end, especially, because I watch, that side of the ball a little bit more, I think. But when it comes to more of the meat and potatoes type of players like you're talking about, I can't tell you about the different offensive tackles and offensive guards that went. A lot of people, if you kind of listen to the talk, it was kind of boring for a lot of people because you didn't see the skill positions, and those are the folks that your big media networks talk about more often than not. And when they're going second, third, fourth, fifth round, the first round can be kind of boring, and that's the one that gets all the prime time. That's Thursday night. We're going to do it. I remember that was one of the best things that the NFL did a few years ago, was moving it the first round to prime time on Thursday night. That's the highlight of a football fan's off season right there. So there are a few questions I had with some of those players like defensive ends and defensive tackles that went a little bit earlier than I thought. But it was a good draft. If you really follow the NFL and you're worried about how your team's going to do, I think that there are a lot of teams that met some needs.
Yeah.
And it's funny because the first 7 picks in the first round were all linemen. You didn't get the first skill position until the 8th pick. The St. Louis Rams took Tavon Austin from West Virginia, the wide receiver. And then after that, probably the big shock, which I had never heard of this happening, but 3 players in a row came from the same school. And now we're not saying this because we're Alabama fans, but it is pretty impressive that the New York Jets, the Tennessee Titans, and the San Diego Chargers all took players, and all 3 came from the University of Alabama. Correct me if I'm wrong, but that's never happened. I know at Alabama it's never happened in the first round, but has that ever happened before in the NFL draft where one school had 3 players taken in a row in the first round?
I'm sure that was the first.
I think the last time that happened was like 61 they were talking about.
Yeah, you're right. I think you're right.
It hadn't been in the modern era. So no.
Now, was there anybody in the first round that got taken that you were kind of like, okay, this is kind of a stunner to me. Why was this guy taken?
I wouldn't say shocked, but I would say Jonathan Cooper from North Carolina, guard. I knew he had first round abilities, but if you watch his film, he had an up and down season, kind of like North Carolina had. The ability is there. I don't think he was able to string it, together, week in, week out. I knew he had the ability to be a first round guy. He has a skill set, but I was surprised that he was taken so early in the first round. I mean, he was a top 10 pick, so that was a shocker.
Well, I think I agree. It's not necessarily. There's some people that I'm not necessarily shocked that they went early, but I'm shocked that they went before some people. I'm going to go as high as the third pick was Deion Jordan, the defensive end from Oregon. He went to the Dolphins. I don't think he was the best defensive ends available, without a doubt. And I think, and honestly, I'm not really so sure that he was necessarily that proven, because he's coming from a Pac-12, fun and gun style. There's not really a lot of defense in the Pac-12. A lot of people are willing to argue. I'm not going to bring that argument up right now, but I think it was apparent that they're trying to emulate a Jason Taylor at the Dolphins.
I wasn't really shocked by Jordan, because Jordan he's a freak show. If you remember, when he was at Oregon, he played receiver his first couple of years. Because the speed,
and that's the thing, he's not big. Like, are they going to keep him at defensive end?
He's an outside linebacker. He was outside linebacker at Oregon. He's outside linebacker, defensive end. He was a big receiver that can run, that turned into a hell of a linebacker.
See, if he plays defensive end, I'd be willing to bet that there's going to be some 300+ pounds offensive lineman willing to eat him up pretty quick.
Yeah, his skill set. I think the Dolphins running the 3-4. He'll be at that outside linebacker position, and him, rushing the passer. A lot of offensive linemen can't get their hands on him, so he causes some havoc.
See, I would have thought the best defensive end there would have been Mingo out of LSU. He went
third. He was a third out of the defensive ends. He went sixth to Cleveland
and
Browns.
I thought without a doubt he was the best one that was available.
I think sometime in the draft, and you guys kind of saw it when Eric Fisher got drafted, I think sometime we get caught up on the highest profile player on the highest profile team in college football, and all the time that doesn't translate well into the draft. Let's look at this past year. You had the running back with the Redskins that came from FAU. I forget his name at the moment. Morris was a 7th round pick, and then you had all these other running backs that came out before him from bigger name schools. Well, he actually performed the best. I'll tell anybody, in my personal opinion, the best running back in this draft was Jonathan Franklin. He had the best skill set. It was between him and Giovanni Bernard.
Well, Brandon, you tell me, because you've got more football experience than probably either of us. I know, Kyle, you've got some football experience as well. But is it a matter of fit? What's going to be the best fit for your team? What's going to be the best, what's going to help your team chemistry? I guess I know that term's thrown around a lot, and that might be a whole bunch of just, as our vice president likes to say, malarkey. That might be a whole bunch of mess, but
you hit it right on the head. A lot of it's the scheme that we run opposed to the scheme that you ran in college, and what's that learning curve going to be. If you ran a 3-4 in college, you're already used to that 3-4 scheme. So when you come into our team, you're already familiar, or the type of offense that we ran as opposed to the type of offense that you ran in college. If I get a guy that ran a similar scheme and he fits that skill set that I'm looking for, the skill set of the other people at that position, it's a much easier transition. Because sometime in that rookie year, sometimes it ain't all about talent. It's about who makes the quicker transition.
And because that's the only reason I could, in my mind, justify why the Dolphins would pick Deion Jordan over Barkevious Mingo.
And also look at where the NFL is going. Colin Kaepernick, RG3, this spread that's in the NFL right now.
You want guys on the ends that can catch somebody that gets outside quick.
You got a 3-4 outside linebacker that can outrun. Jordan I think he's running sub 4.4. He can run with anybody. You get him to take that pitch, man. You got to fight that speed with speed. So you're going to see a lot more of these guys going. And even Mingo. Mingo's an undersized defensive end. I think people forget how small Mingo is.
Well, and I think probably the pick I'd have to say that really left a lot of people scratching their heads, and even the fans in New York, was when the Jets, their 13th pick, they took Sheldon Richardson from Missouri. Not knocking him, but even Gruden said, I don't get this pick. There's other guys that are better. he was only used in third downs, and he wasn't even that good. So why are they wasting this pick on him when they could have gotten? I mean, there were plenty of defensive ends still on the board that they could have got. The John Werner from Florida State, who the Colts ended up getting on pick number 24, so they had plenty of time. But
and it's interesting you brought up the Jets because they picked their first 2 picks were defensive players.
Mm-hmm.
I think the big question that everybody's bringing up with the Jets, what's going on with
Quarterback.
Well, and in case anybody doesn't know what Matt was bringing up and what we've talked about off air, Geno Smith was selected in the second round by the Jets. Now, we all knew that the moment that they did that, I think we all kind of saw the writing on the wall that, okay, this is it. Tebow's gone because they can't have that many quarterbacks. And I'm with you. I mean, what do y'all think about that pick? Because there's a lot of people think it was not smart, that he doesn't have a good work ethic, he's got problems. I mean, how much do you think that's true, and how much of it do you think, no, I think the media's being a little hard on him?
Are they going to play him as a quarterback? That's the question, Geno Smith. That's the question that comes to my mind first.
From everything I hear, they're playing him at quarterback.
See, does that mean that they're not sold on Sanchez? Or are they, even going to give McElroy a shot? What are they moving on to Geno Smith and he's the quarterback of the future?
I think the message has been sent when you draft a quarterback that high that this is the direction that we're going to go. I think the only reason that Mark Sanchez is still in New York right now is the amount of salary that he's due for the year, and you don't want to take. I think it's an $8 million hit. But I think if it wasn't for that, Mark Sanchez would be in the unemployment line right now.
And it's funny because most of the people that are his supporters will point and go, well, remember, he took us to 2 AFC championships in a row. Yeah, you didn't win them, and he's been a complete and utter basket case ever since. Now, when they took D. Milner as their first pick, a lot of people said, yeah, that's a smart.
That's Milner Island. You're replacing Revis Island with Milner Island.
Right, because you got rid of Revis to the Bucs, so this is going to be your new big defensive star.
Right. I don't think that's a question at all. I mean, that's understandable.
Yeah, is it?
Now, one of the other people, I don't know if anybody else experienced this. It kind of started to piss me off after a while. At first I thought it was funny, but now it started to get irritating through the first round. Every time a linebacker position came open, it was almost like Chris Berman, and they were like, could this be where Manny Te'o goes? And I wanted to be like, what in the hell do you guys have invested in this guy to think he's even a top 3 round pick?
He's got a hot girlfriend.
Yeah, apparently, yeah. She's the most,
Have we found her? Have we found her yet?
Well, there was a picture of her because apparently the chair next to him at the draft was empty, so we don't know. We think that could have been her.
Smoking.
Yeah.
I heard she made the Maximum Hot 100.
Yeah, she's on the cover. She's behind the other person. You just can't see her.
Okay.
But, but it was so ridiculous because it was like, did anybody not watch the national championship? And I'm not saying this because I'm an Alabama fan, but let's be honest. Eddie Lacy was a third-round pick for the Green Bay Packers. So what the NFL is saying is he's a third-round running back.
Was he third or second? I thought he was second.
He's second round.
Oh, I'm sorry, second round. This guy, who was supposed to be this big, gigantic linebacker, runner-up to the Heisman, got his ass handed to him, not only by Eddie Lacy, but also by TJ Yeldon. Now, I'm trying to say to myself, okay, this is the closest thing you have to an NFL team in college, and you got the crap kicked out of you. What are you going to do when you're going against Pro Bowlers and guys that have been doing this for 10 years?
And my question is it that learning curve? Is it fitting the needs better, like Brandon, like you were talking about? Is that something that maybe Te'o has going for him that the team see in him, or the team that picked him saw in him?
I think that Manti Te'o has a lot of talent. I don't think you can look at what he's done over his 4 years in college and kind of throw it out the window after that Alabama game. But I will say this: the Alabama game, it showed the holes in this game. Right. He has a problem separating, shedding blocks, and he has a problem with physical downhill runners. He doesn't tackle well. He tackles well when he's scraping. The ball runs away from him. He scrapes to the ball. He's excellent at that. The problem is when that running back is coming downhill at you, he has a little bit of a problem. One thing I will say is this. A linebacker is kind of like a running back. You only look as good as your defensive lineman because they're supposed to keep the offensive lineman off of you. So when people talk about that Alabama game, I look at I look at that a little bit because when you see it, the offensive lineman in his grill, and then you got Lacey coming behind him, and it's like, wow. So let's kind of see what he's going to do. But I didn't think that he was a top 3 pick. I mean, top 3 round pick.
You look at that offensive line, and they went 10th and 11th.
Mm-hmm.
So that's understandable.
He'll see him again.
Well, and it's funny because the next person. Now, this is a person that both Matt, you, and Brandon brought up with that we knew was going to get drafted. We just didn't know where. 3rd round, the 69th pick, the Arizona Cardinals took Tyrann Mathieu, cornerback from LSU, the Honey Badger. A lot of people, he caught a lot of flack in the news last week because he was basically telling the Cardinals, if I don't get a contract with guaranteed money, I will not sign. And a lot of people got upset saying, look, you're lucky you're even getting a contract after the crap you went through. But let me ask you this. Does that shock you that he was taken in the 3rd round? Or do you think, no, he probably should have been a little higher? That he just, because of everything that happened, that's why he fell back?
Because everything that happened, 3rd round was, 3rd, 4th, round was kind of why.
Didn't even play last year.
Yeah, didn't play at all. But one thing that I will say is that I think that was a good landing spot for him. Him being with Patrick Peterson is the best thing for him. Patrick Peterson's dad has kind of kept his arm around him, and Patrick Peterson was the guy he trained with, even in the offseason. I think that was a good landing spot.
It was good. It was good for Matthew, but I don't see where he can make all those demands because he hasn't proven that he can stay clean yet. He hasn't even done that yet.
Yeah.
At least not to my knowledge.
Yeah.
He had trouble with it even when he wasn't playing last season.
And they said too that they're going to probably use what they call the Cecil Collins contract, where they're going to say, look, yeah, we'll give you this money, but you so much as even get a misdemeanor, that's it, you're gone, and you're paying all that money back. Because I think that's what people don't understand is these teams are not as dumb as we think they are. I mean, they're going to, we'll give you what you want, but there's going to be some stipulations to it.
Right.
Now, the one that I really have got to get your opinion on, both of you, is because we had this discussion in our preseason one for college football. Matt Barkley in the 4th round, taken by the Eagles. A lot of people were saying if he just would have left his junior year, he could have been a 1st-round pick. How do you guys agree with that, or do y'all disagree with that? That he could have been a 1st-round pick if he'd have left after his junior year?
I agree with that.
Yeah, he would have been the 1st-round pick.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Where do you think it is that it all fell apart? Was it that when they lost to Stanford and he realized, okay, we're out of it? Or do you think it was, no, it finally just came, that he really wasn't as good as everybody thought he was?
He struggled with injury all last year, didn't he?
Yeah. Shoulder, ankle, yeah.
And now he's going to go play in Philadelphia for that spread offense that Kelly's bringing. What do you see? Because he comes from a pro-style offense. How can he adapt to that, or is it?
One of the things I will say about Chip, and you can go look at his offenses at New Hampshire. People see the spread that he ran at Oregon, they think that's all Chip's about. Chip runs multiple offenses. Now he's become famous because he ran a spread at Oregon, but when you look at the quarterbacks he had in New Hampshire, they ran 4 evers. So he's able to adjust his offense to the skill set of quarterback that he has. So he's going to look at the skill set that he has on the board. Yes, he wants to have the quarterback that can run around a little bit, but if he doesn't have it, he can adjust his offense just the same.
Now, I will say this. This made me happy. We've got to talk about this. The 14th pick to the Carolina Panthers in the 1st round, star, what's his last name?
Tulele.
Okay. Was picked, and if anybody was listening to our podcast before, we were worried because when he went to the combine, they were worried about having heart problems. They didn't even know if he was going to play. But this is the guy that I want to give credit to Brandon Jones, because ever since our preseason show, he was telling Matt and me about it, and we were kind of laughing about it, like, okay, whatever, he's at Utah, and the guy's a 1st-round pick. I'll be honest, were you happy when he was announced?
Dude, let me tell you something. That's like one of the biggest "I told you so" moments of the locker room.
And I don't really do that. I tell people this all the time. I'm a person. I watch college football. I'm not like an SEC guy or anything like that. I watch college football. This dude jumped off he was disruptive. He was one of the most dominant defensive tackles I've seen since.
I like how Kyle waited 10 to 15 minutes into the show to give you credit.
Yeah,
by the way.
we gotta
That was
he was like the kid at Nebraska with the attitude problems, and there's a place for the lines now. Ndamukong Suh.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
He was a Ndamukong Suh-esque, and if it weren't for this heart issue, he probably would have been the number 1 pick in the draft. This heart issue, at first they were saying he might not get drafted. A lot of teams.
So you're saying the
backed
reason
off
he was down as far as he was
Was the heart
was the
issue.
heart
Yeah.
issue.
And think about it, he was still first round.
Yeah.
It wasn't like he dropped all the way to the 5th round. I mean, he was still first round. And he's going to the Panthers, which he will make an immediate impact.
I mean, him and another person who also had some health issues that dropped him was DJ Hayden from Houston. But if you were to ever see DJ Hayden play healthy, he was one of the top corners in the nation.
And that's what's funny. He was taken 12th by the Raiders. So 2 spots ahead of Starr. And, of course, the people on... it depends on what network you were watching. If you were on the NFL Network, totally different group of people. But on ESPN, it was almost like Mel Kiper and them were shocked. But Gruden was right there going, no, I totally see this. I think these are good picks. Now, this is the one I have to ask. And, Matt, I'm going to start with you because I got to get your opinion on this. If anybody was watching the ESPN broadcast of it, when the Buffalo Bills came on the clock and they had the 16th pick, everybody's excited. Oh, they're going to get a quarterback. We're going to see our first quarterback taken. Everybody was talking about Geno Smith. And John Gruden had the greatest line of the night when he looked at Berman and said, I think that Geno Smith may have some friends at ESPN because I don't see the fascination with this kid. I mean, he's okay, but if you're going to take somebody, you take E.J. Manuel. And before you know it, it was almost like the Bills were watching, and then they said, okay, we're going to take E.J. Manuel. What did you think when they announced that E.J. Manuel was going to the Bills?
I was more thinking along the lines of what John Gruden was thinking at the beginning of, why is he getting so many friends at ESPN? Didn't everybody see the last half of the season that he played? It goes to show that I think that while football is still evolving, in as far as professionally, especially with the quarterback position and West Coast versus pro style versus spread and just the way it's evolved over time, I think there's still that equilibrium of we always go back to the pro style. That's really it. Teams just converge back to that more, pro style offense. I'm not saying E.J. Manuel's not, doesn't run the spread very well. He's a very mobile quarterback. That's without a doubt. But when you compare him to Geno Smith, he is more of a, he comes from the Jimbo Fisher scheme. He's more, quote unquote, prepared for the NFL than a lot of people would think a Geno is.
Man, E.J. Manuel has all the physical gifts. I think the thing that was the most frustrating if you watched him was that you saw him play one game and you saw all that talent, and then in the next game you're like, the hell, E.J.? I mean, but he's a huge kid. I think he's 6'4", 6'5". He's 240. Runs in the 4.4, 4.5-ish. Sounds like someone that we used to know, played down south, Warcam Eagle. Kind of same build as that guy. Him going to Buffalo, everybody thought Buffalo was going to take the kid out of Syracuse or, take Smith. But, hey, it was a good pick. Let's see what EJ can do. I think he really lit it up in the Senior Bowl.
I think he's more prepared, coming from Jimbo Fisher's system. I think he's more prepared for the NFL. Jimbo comes from that school of Saban that just prepares players for the NFL a little bit better. Who's the crazy guy at West Virginia now? The one with the
Dana Holgerson?
That's the one. I didn't want to say Holmgren because that's Holgerson. He, who has he really sent that has just made waves in the NFL? Brandon
He really had anybody, but
Browser.
he had. I mean, he hasn't had a quarterback. He's had, Dez Bryant. He's had
right when he was at Oklahoma State.
Yeah.
Right. Now, the one thing we want to talk about, and this is probably the last thing we wrap up with on the draft, Geno Smith. Now, Brandon, you and I were talking about this off mic, and Matt, you and I had been talking about it earlier. Geno Smith has really been catching a lot of flack. A lot of people felt like he was acting like a child, that, because he wasn't taking the first round. And then, the report came out before the draft where the guy was criticizing him, saying he had no work ethic. Even Gruden was saying, as Matt, you pointed, that if you look at his season, he started out great, 5-0, and then he ran into Texas Tech. And after that loss, they go 2-6 the rest of the, or 2-5 the rest of the way. And it was almost like he didn't know how to handle it. But there's a lot of people who feel like they're being too hard on him. What do you guys feel? Do you think they're right on with what they're saying, or do you think no? It's, hey, I think you are being a little hard on this guy. I think you're pounding him a little too hard.
I'll go back to this. People say look at the second half of the season, but if you look at the second half of the season, the offense wasn't the problem. The offense was never the problem at West Virginia.
It was the defense.
Do they even play it? They even play defense over there?
And you brought it up, Matt, too. And you brought it up when we were talking about when they played, what was it?
Baylor?
They played Baylor, and it was a friggin' basketball score. That to me was the reason I felt like Geno Smith got all that attention, because, oh my gosh, it was a PlayStation 3 game, and look at this, and the next thing you know, he was in the running for the Heisman.
Yeah, I mean, like I said, I look at that season, they lost all those games, but the offense was putting up points. The problem was the defense was giving up double the amount.
They want to stop somebody, they'll burn a couch at an intersection.
Yeah, and I look at it like this. Geno, when he said that the Jets are going to the playoffs, everything started from there. He fired an agent. He's done all this other stuff. I was like, hey, just keep a low profile.
And here's the thing that we have to realize. These are still 22, 23-year-olds. They're basically getting their first job out of college. I mean, that's what it really is.
Yeah.
And it's nationally televised. And so when things don't happen the way they want, how do you expect a 22 or 23-year-old to act when they don't get the job that they want? When that was the case for me, I was upset. I went home and pouted a little bit, I'll be honest, but it wasn't nationally televised. That was the difference.
And this right here, this expert analysis from Matt, Brandon, and myself, this is why we're better than all the rest. Make sure you come back, because part 2, talking about the NBA, and this is where Brandon is going to tell us why he hates the Indiana Pacers.
Hate the Pacers?
Yes.